All right, Shalom, and all praises be to the Most High God, Yahweh, and His Son, whose name is Yahweh Shai. This is the Brother Sagalah, and I'm bringing this lesson out through the Spirit, and the premise of it is coming from this article here that you see on the screen. And this article is dated July the 2nd, 2025. And as you see here, it says the U.S. dollar has lost 10% since January as global investors react to trade tensions, rising deficits, and uncertainty over the Federal Reserve. Now, it goes on to say it's been a rough few months for the greenback, the U.S. dollar generally thought of as a safe haven in times of economic and geopolitical turmoil. But it hasn't been like that lately. The dollar had a big rally right after Donald Trump was elected, with investors anticipating a return to lower U.S. interest rates and higher corporate profits. Instead, as the trade war has heated up and deficits look to go higher, the dollar has cooled. The U.S. dollar index, measuring the U.S. currency against a basket of 6 major currencies, is down about 10% since January, and with the blips and bumps, just keeps edging lower week after week. At the beginning of the year, the dollar started sliding, pointed out Jonas Gottleman at Capital Economics. This is the worst start of the year for the dollar since 1973, the year that Nixon took the U.S. off of gold. It goes on to say it does feel like a turning point, and that the dollar is probably now in a downward trend on a multi-year horizon, he said. This downward move is somewhat counterintuitive. Financial conditions right now would actually tend to support a higher dollar. Typically, a country's currency rises when its interest rates are higher than its competitors, meaning its economy is running hotter. Investors plow into those assets to get a higher return and more growth potential. The U.S. does have high interest rates, and our economy is doing better than most others, but said Joseph Ganan with the Peterson Institute for International Economics, the correlation between strong U.S. economy, high U.S. interest rates, and the strong dollar seems to have broken. Instead, he said the U.S. tariff and trade policy is canceling out those traditional factors. If you have policies that foreigners think don't make sense, and you're actually having an out of control fiscal deficit, downgrading of the U.S. credit rating, and just blaming foreigners as a foreign investor, why would you want more money in the dollar in the U.S.? So this is the nations. Now you see the BRICS alliance, the BRICS nations headed by Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, the founding members, and another 30 nations or more are now starting to come up with their own currency backed by gold. Now, all of this is really touching on the fact that these economic woes and issues, see like charts like this showing this year how there's been a downward spiral as we're going, throughout the rest of the year. We're halfway through the year already. Now, that 10% could seem like not much, right? Because it says it's been 10%. It's on a decline by 10% this year. Now, for perspective, that 10% that it's down is the difference of if a person makes $100,000, when you look it up, it's down 10.7%, actually. Then when you look at that 10.7% and you look at a person who will make $100,000, it would be like a person that's making now that will be making 100. In actuality, they're bringing in about $89,000. That's one way to look at it. Look at the significance of that 10%. So in the last handful of years to the point we are now, people that make $100,000, to use that as a benchmark, really are making about $89,000. Then if you look at that, look further into the future, which you have, but what makes up the economic system here in Babylon or America is the futures market the S&P 500, you know, and the stock market as is known. The stock market is the, futures market, and the S&P 500. Now, the futures market, just to go into that briefly before we get into the scriptures, is a market for buying and selling and trading predetermined future dates, trading for predetermined future dates. So it's an outlook for what's to come. That's the purpose of the future market in general. Now, the overall purpose of the stock market is the primary purpose is to facilitate buying and selling of goods and shares globally. And that's done by promoting trade and commerce, trade within, with different nations around the world. So global trading by publicly traded companies. So when you get to the S&P 500, another part of the stock market overall, the S&P 500 tracks stocks from the 500 highest publicly traded companies in the U.S. And the S&P 500 is a gauge, it's like a gauge of the wellness and health of American stocks. The performance of American stocks and its economy worldwide. Now, I just wanted to go over that before touching on, these few scriptures, because this is kind of what we see going on now. Let me get this here. Is that we have a system that's flawed and that is broken, and it's faltering and falling apart. And as the scriptures say, Babylon can't be healed. There's nothing that can be done to actually offset what's coming. And they're trying everything. They're trying with the big, beautiful bill. They're trying to cut, different programs, government programs, but nothing's is going to suffice, because the Most High God Yahweh and His Son Yahweh Shai, are determined to bring the end of this place, to bring, the captives, which are the children of Israel, the elect today, to bring the captives to rulership. Esau is the end of the world, 2 Ezra 6 and 9, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. The Most High say He's determined to gather the nations. So this is what's going on, and there's nothing that can be done to stop what's going on. So the economic climate and system is only going to get worse, according to the Bible. Proverbs 23 and 5, it says, "Wilt thou set thine eyes upon that which is not? For riches certainly make themselves wings. They fly away as an eagle toward heaven." So it says riches make themselves wings and they fly away. They fly away, meaning very quickly this system is deteriorating, it's falling apart. So riches are making themselves wings and flying away. This is a metaphor, as an eagle toward heaven. So would you put your eyes upon that which is not? Would you put your trust into something that according to the Most High's word, don't have a chance of actually sufficing and surviving? No, Babylon cannot be healed, nor will she. So are you going to put your heart into this place, is what the Most High is asking. Are you going to put your heart into this, or are you going to trust in Him? Speaking to those that have eyes to see and ears to hear, which would be the elect. This is 1 Timothy 6 in verse 5. It says, "Perverse disputings of men of corrupt minds and destitute of the truth, supposing that gain is godliness, from such withdraw themselves." Now, I'm going to read this in the NLT, 1 Timothy 6 and 5. "These people always cause trouble. Their minds are corrupt," speaking of the Edomites, who's ruling the earth. Job 9 and 24, the earth being given into the hand of the wicked. "And they have turned their backs on the truth." See, Esau, the Bible says, God is not in all of his thoughts. They've turned their backs on the truth. "To them, a show of godliness is just a way to become wealthy." So to the Edomites, the wealth that they possess and the power that they have amassed here on the earth is just a way to show that it's through their wealth, it's through their power, through their technological, prowess and advances. That's what makes them actually sit in the seat of the Most High. To them, that is what's righteous, not actually what the scriptures say. And we'll touch on that as we speak on what is righteous in the sight of the Most High. So once again, it says, to them in the NLT, 1 Timothy 6 and 5, "To them, the latter half, a show of godliness is just a way to become wealthy." So their wealth. That's why everything is centered around trade and capitalism, making money. That's why this system has run amok, has run its course. Now, verse 6, 1 Timothy 6:6, it says, but godliness with contentment is great gain, having what you need, right? That is great gain in the sight of the Most High, as it says in Sirach 26 and verse 4, whether a man be rich and poor, right? If he have a good heart toward the Adawan, he will at all times rejoice with a cheerful countenance. That's godliness with contentment, which that's great in the sight of the Most High. For we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain that we can carry nothing out. And that's the thing we all have to remember. Anything that we have here, we can't take with us on a chariot. There's nothing that we possess that we can actually take with us here. Nothing. And having food and raiment, let us be there with content. So not even our bodies. We can't take these bodies with us. So there's nothing that we have here that we're going to be able to take with us. So having what we need is what's most important as we come into a time where resources are going to be very scarce. Now, continuing on. But they that will be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and hurtful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition. So a lot of men are drowned into destruction through the temptations that's out here to be more rich, to get more money. We just spoke about how the difference of the 10% is the difference, is 10.7%, that the dollar is down within this year. And that's the difference of a person making $89,000, dollars as opposed to 100 if they're on paper making $100,000. So it's the illusion of wealth. So it's going to take more and more of that up until the time that this dollar crashes. It says, for the love of money is the root of all evil. And that's what this is all about. The love of mammon. The Lord said you can't love mammon and him. You'll either love one or hate the other, mammon being money. So you have to choose whether or not you're going to, because the thing about love, when you love something, you put your heart into it. You prioritize it in your life. So that's why it says the love of money, and why you can't love mammon and the Most High. You got to choose which one you're going to love, which one you're going to prioritize. For the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith, meaning they've sinned, they went astray from what's right, and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. And that's something that Esau, Edom, the man of sin, has done. He's pierced himself through with many sorrows for the love of money, for the love of wealth, material wealth. And that's why the world is in a tailspin right now at this current moment. Now, the love of money, let's touch on that, and we'll come back here. I don't worry about this. I will come back and get verse 11 after this. This is the book of Ecclesiastes 7. And I'll go to the point in verse 12. It says, for wisdom is a defense, and money is a defense, but the excellency of knowledge, it says, is that wisdom giveth life to them that have it. So wisdom is going to give life to those that actually possess it. Isaiah 33:6 comes to mind. Wisdom and knowledge shall be the stability of thy times. So it's going to give life, and it's going to stabilize the elect now and unto the end. Ecclesiastes 7:12 again. For wisdom is a defense, having the knowledge of the truth is going to actually defend the believers. And money is a defense. So in this life, money is a defense. So having money, is a way to actually, be protected from things that if you didn't have it, you wouldn't have the ability to actually get out of certain situations. So money can be a defense of sorts in this life, of course. It says, and money is a defense, but the excellency of knowledge, it says, is that wisdom giveth life to them that have it. So really what it's truly about is the excellency of knowledge. The excellency of knowledge. That's ultimately having this truth and faith and growing thereby. So let's go to Wisdom of Solomon, the 8th chapter. The excellency of knowledge. What's important about having the excellency of knowledge? Wisdom of Solomon 8:5. If riches be a possession to be desired in this life. Now we just read that wisdom is a defense and money is a defense. Right? But having the excellency of knowledge, that is chief. If riches be a possession to be desired in this life, what is richer than wisdom that worketh all things? So what's better than having actually wisdom as opposed to the riches of this world? And we read in Proverbs 23:5 that riches make themselves wings and they fly away like an eagle toward heaven, meaning they evaporate. They come and they go. Riches comes and they go. So what should our mind be stayed on? What should we be prioritizing or loving in these times? Even more and more, the more we're in the knowledge of this truth. So we should be prioritizing, the riches that come from wisdom, because that worketh all things. That's how you're going to be stabilized. That's how you're going to be able to be preserved, to actually make it out of here. Now let's show why that's important. Let's go back a chapter. Wisdom of Solomon 7 in verse 28. It says, for the Most High or God loveth none but him that dwelleth with wisdom. So that makes perfect sense when you go back to Wisdom of Solomon 8:5. If riches be a possession to be desired in this life, what is richer than wisdom that worketh all things? Because the Most High loved those that dwell with wisdom. And that would be the believers, starting with the elect men, 144,000. Now, let's get something real quick before we close it out. This is 1 Timothy 6 in verse 11. But thou, O man of the Most High, flee these things and follow after righteousness, which is those that will possess wisdom are following after righteousness, godliness, faith, love, patience, and meekness. So the righteous are following, after these things. They possess, the mind to actually follow after spiritual things as opposed to carnal things, because the carnal mind is enmity or hatred with the Most High. But thou, O man of God, flee these things and follow after righteousness, godliness, faith, love, patience, and meekness. So that's what the believers are following after. Because once again, this way of living is corroded. Now, when we go here to Ecclesiastes 12, it tells us to remember our Creator in the days of our youth, before the destruction come. Now, verse 3 says, in the day when the keepers of the house, these will be the people that run the stock markets of the world, the futures market, the S&P 500, right? The stock markets all around the world. These would be your speculators, your traders. They are known as the keepers of the house. In the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease because they are few, and those that look out the windows be darkened. So grinding work is going to cease. It says because it be few, because of all the futility with the economic system, and also the push of artificial intelligence, the push for AI, So the push for AI has caused more and more jobs to be cut, and that's going to continue to happen more and more in all facets and forms of this economy. Now, it talks about the grinders are going to cease because they are few. And then it says, and those that look out the windows be darkened, meaning the prospect of Babylon is very dim and grim. It's becoming darker and darker, as we see here. The U.S. dollar has lost 10% since January as global investors react to trade tensions, rising deficits, and uncertainty over the Federal Reserve. So there's a lot of uncertainty. So that, once again, in Ecclesiastes 12 and 3, the latter half, it says, and grinders cease because they are few. That's work. And those that look out the windows be darkened. So everything is looking more and more dim and grim. Verse 4, and the doors shall be shut in the streets, speaking of the businesses, when the sound of grinding is low, when work is not going to be here, right? When there's going to be super hyperinflation, and a lot of mom and pop businesses and corporations are going to have to close, so on and so forth. That's going to be the sound of grinding being low. And it says, and he shall rise up at the voice of the bird, and all the daughters of music shall be brought low, which are our people. The daughters of music, the Israelites, are about to be brought very low, because they are the lowest on the totem pole amongst all these nations. Using America as an example, being that great melting pot amongst all the nations. When you look it up, you have Elam, or the East Indians. the Chinese, the Edomites, and then other nations. Those are just to name a few that are ahead of the children of Israel. And then you have, of the 12 tribes, you have so-called black women, and then on down from there, Hispanics, so-called Hispanics, which make up the 12 tribes, and Native Americans. So-called black and brown people, the Israelites here in America, are on the bottom part of the scale, the economic scale. So why is that? Because once again, the children of Israel are actually in captivity. They're actually here to continue to help facilitate the system to keep everything going. They're not here to actually rule and call shots and be bosses and run things and run industries and, change and impact the world for that matter. Our people are primarily used as guinea pigs to continue this system to keep going. And if it wasn't for the Most High, that's kind of what it would be. That's what it would be. Everything would just keep going as it is. But see, this system is failing, and it's failing because now the Most High is taking away the grinding. He's making it where a work is going to be few and far in between. Like when you go back to the time of an idea is the time of the Great Depression, it was like 40+% of people who were, 40+%, I don't know the exact numbers, who were actually not employed during that time, 30 to 40%. And for our people, it was more like 75+% who didn't have work, who didn't have a way to create money, wealth, to take care of themselves. So then what do people do? Become solely dependent upon the government. Now, this is Zephaniah 1:10, and it shall come to pass in that day, saith the Lord Yahweh, that there shall be the noise of a cry from the fish gate. So these are the people, once again, that are running the economic systems of the world. That's the noise of a cry from the fish gate, and an howling from the second, and a great crashing from the hill. So there's going to be a second great crash that's coming, which is making reference to or mentioning, the second, great crash, which we just spoke about, or I made mention of, going back to the time in the 1930s. So there's going to be a second great crash, a second great depression. Let's read that again, Zephaniah 1:10. And it shall come to pass in that day, saith the Lord Yahweh, that there shall be the noise of a cry from the fish gate, and an howling from the second, and a great crashing from the hills. Speaking of the nations. So the nation's economic systems are going to crash. Now, I have this thing here I wanted to show before I close it out. There's a saying in the world, the phrase, when America coughs, the world catches a cold, is a commonly used idiom that highlights the significant influence the United States economy has on the rest of the world. So when America coughs, the world catches a cold. And that's just speaking of the significance of America's economy being the largest economy in the world. So when there's major problems here in Babylon, what does that mean for the world? And we've seen that over and over again become more and more of a problem throughout Europe and Germany and different places. In Greece, different nations' economies have just collapsed. Venezuela, all over the globe. We see that more and more and more. So with that, I pray that this lesson was edifying to you, believing brothers and sisters. I want to give all praises, infinite honor and glory to the God of heaven and earth, Yahweh, Bahashem Yahawashi, Bahashem Rakakwadash. Honors be to the elect elders of the nation of Israel, Barakim La Habayath Madawadah. Blessings to the house of David, which you brothers laboring, and to the Akim Wa'akwath brothers and sisters that also listen and believe on the glorious gospel being preached throughout the four corners of the earth. And to you, I say, Shalom, Shalom, and Barakatham.